Good morning, everybody. That's everybody here is saying good morning. So all of you who are watching online right now, say good morning back so that we don't feel alone. All right. Over the last several months, we have sent out 3 of our boys to go and begin their journey in serving our country. And today we are going to be sending out our 4th. First, it was Christian, and then it was Matt, and then it was Jason. And today we are going to be praying for a young man named Richard. So while he comes up, would you put your hands together and welcome him? So, fun story about Richard. He played for Bedford High School soccer team and absolutely destroyed us last year. But we still love him a whole lot and are excited about what he is going to do. He is going to be joining the Navy and is looking for God to show him some ways of how he can serve him beyond that. And so, take a quick look at all of these people here who are committing to live out the story of We Are With You, to pray for you while you are gone, and know that we are in your corner. So would you please bow your head and close your eyes as we pray together. God, we love you so much, and we just thank you for what you are doing here in the hearts of so many, and we pray for all of our servicemen and women all over, and we pray now that you will prepare Richard as you've prepared him his whole entire life to serve you, to serve in ways that we could never appreciate fully. And God, we thank you so much that these are your plans for his life, and he has found it and discovered it. And God, as he leaves this place, it is our prayer that he does so with joy, and that he rushes into the darkness with such a bright light that he carries. God, I pray that you would bless him and his effort and his family, and prepare all the relationships that he's going to have for the rest of his life. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Put your hands together for Richard one more time, everybody. All right, if you have your Bibles, go ahead and open them up to the book of James, chapter 2. The book of James, chapter 2. If you are watching online or you don't have a Bible with you, we just pull out your phone real quick, pull up the App Store, and type in the search bar, YouVersion Bible app. It is the greatest Bible app that there is out there right now, and it is totally free. There are tons of translations and Bible reading plans for you to read on your own at home. And there are topical studies, stuff that you're like, man, I've never even read the Bible on my own. That is totally cool. It's okay. There are translations that we primarily teach from the New International Version, and we will spotlight a little bit in the Message paraphrase as well. And it is super, super easy to read. So if you are in James chapter 2, put your thumb there. We're going to kick off here in just a second. We're in week 2 right now of a series that we are calling The Wasteland. And The Wasteland is us realizing that we were made for more. And when we look out our windows and walk through our doors, it doesn't take long for you and I to realize that this is just like the way that the world is right now. It's not supposed to be that way. Like if you have popped open the news in the last couple of days, or if you have got emailed updates from your news subscription or whatever, you will have noticed, like in California, wildfires are raging, and it is impossible. It is impossible for us to see that and not feel something deep down within our hearts. We're like, it should not be this way. This is not the way that it is supposed to be. And it is walking into moments and situations in dysfunction where we would say, like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? It's not enough to just know that things aren't supposed to be this way, that it should be a better way. The book of James is this incredible letter where everybody recognized, kind of like when Jesus walked into their life, like he kind of changed everything. Like he changed their attitude, he changed their perspective. He changed who people would invite over to their family's holiday Thanksgiving festivals. Like he changed everything. He changed how people spent their money. He changed how people built their houses, where people lived, what kind of relationships they had. He changed everything. And the reality is following Jesus in the wasteland is not easy. It's much easier to, as we talked as a community, it's much easier to stand at the window of our lives, look into the life of other people, and begin to judge and point fingers and mock and scoff and do so behind closed doors, because we would never do that in front of people. We would never show that side of ourselves. It's easier to do that than it is for us to stare into a mirror and see all of our own flaws, isn't it? But as we talked last week, James brought up this beautiful idea that it's impossible for us to go to a mirror, look at ourselves in the face and see something that needs to change and then walk away and not change it. That's the power of what God's word does in our lives. We look in, we're like, oh, this one really hurt. Following the way of Jesus isn't walking into somebody else's wasteland, somebody else's misery, somebody else's anxiety and depression and saying, I wish you well, go in peace, brother, sister. There is something more meaningful. There is something even more significant that God is actually calling us to do than just be a kind of wish you well kind of people. We wish you well, we wish you well, we wish you well. This is actually not the faith. This is not the faith that God had in mind for all of us to find. This isn't even close to the faith that God had in mind, that he was hoping that you would find, that your family would find. And for many people, faith in the beginning of the journey for us is the faith that we walked away from was this one-time decision. We knew we were making the right decision because people in our lives and our families were nodding their heads and they were shaking their heads and they were like, man, you've got to do this thing. You've got to do this thing. And your entire faith was built on a moment. And then nobody could connect the dots for you of how that faith was supposed to connect the dots for all of the disaster and the dysfunction in this world. And so you did what most logical people would do, is you hung up that kind of faith and you just completely walked away from it. Because you learned a whole lot, you believed a whole lot, but the hard reality is all of that a lot did nothing to change you. It didn't change your heart. And you were like, man, it's just really possible to learn all of this stuff about God, kind of like studying social studies or something, and then not actually be changed. It's absolutely possible. And many of you know and have lived within that tension and have been wrestling all of that. You learned a whole lot about who God was and who God is and the nature of him, but it didn't change anything in you. You made the wise choice to walk away from a kind of faith that is literally just kind of leads all up to this moment, and nobody has any answer for what's next and now what and how does this change my future. That kind of faith, I wouldn't be ashamed of you walking away from that kind of a faith, because that's not the kind of faith that God had in mind. That's not the kind of faith that God has actually called every one of us to actually have. The writer of Proverbs said this, and it's so beautiful. He said, for whoever finds me finds life. Whoever finds me finds life. And I think many of us were like, okay, well, I think I found you because I have this certificate and all these people showed up to this party. I got married in this building and it made my family happy with me, but I don't really feel life. It's because whenever you find that God is not transactional, he actually, from the very beginning, his plan was to be in a relationship. From the very beginning, he his plan was I made you and I would love for you to walk with me. I would love to be a part of every season of your life. You can run from me if you want, but I will not leave you. You can go to the depths of the wasteland, and I will meet you there. You can rise on eagle's wings to the tallest mountain, and when you're there and you're looking down on everything beneath, you will find me there too, because I am with you. And for those of us who have found God, we have learned that it wasn't just this, this one moment, and then everything else is just magical and roses. Actually, following Jesus is really, really hard. And he promised that he would never leave us and he would never forsake us. And our faith system, the faith system that maybe your family passed down to you or maybe you inherited, it goes a little bit like this. It's the counter version of this. David wrote in 1 Samuel 16:7, he said, man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Man gets so caught up in looking on what is on the outside. But God's business is what's happening on the inside. And whenever you find God, you find life. And you find life to the full, to the overflowing, to it tipping out on everybody around you. The reality is there are a lot of people around us with not so much hope. The reality is there, like within our world, within our neighborhood, within our town, there are people who are barely holding on to today. And as we are going to find in James chapter 2, God has called us into his story. He has called us to be participants in a story that he is writing in this world. And our big idea for today is just 3 words we want you to walk away with. It is simply this: tomorrow needs you. Tomorrow needs you. We recognize that there is all kinds of pain and suffering in our world, and for a lot of us, it goes on really unspoken and unannounced. And while we get caught up so easily in getting caught on what's on the outside, God's business is on the inside. And what on earth is the role that he is calling you and me to play in all of this? So James chapter 2, here's what we're going to do. We're going to read through this entire chapter, and I want you to read along with me. Whatever translation you're in, I'll be reading from the NIV, James chapter 2, and then we're going to hop back on 2 giant themes that are running all the way through this particular chapter. So this is James, the brother of Jesus, who is writing these words of like, here's how you should live now. Here we go. Verse 1, my brothers and sisters, believers in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ, must not show favoritism. Suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in filthy old clothes also comes in. If you show special attention to the man wearing fine clothes and say, here's a good seat for you, but you say to the poor man, you stand there, or you can sit on the floor by my feet, have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? Listen, verse 5, my dear brothers and sisters, has God not chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith, to inherit the kingdom he promised to those who love him? But you have dishonored the poor. It's not the rich who are exploiting you. Are they not the ones who are dragging you into court? Are they not the ones who are blaspheming the noble name of him to whom you belong? Verse 8, if you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing right. But if you show favoritism, you sin and are convicted by the law as lawbreakers. For whoever keeps the whole law, yet stumbles at just one point, is guilty of breaking all of it. For he who said you shall not commit adultery also said you shall not murder. And if you do not commit adultery, but you do commit murder, you have become a lawbreaker. Verse 12, speak and act as those who are going to be judged by the law that gives freedom. Because judgment without mercy will be shown to anybody who has not been merciful. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Verse 14, what good is it, my brothers and sisters, if somebody claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes or daily food. If one of you says to him, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. But someone will say, you have faith and I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds and I'll show you my faith by my deeds. You believe that there's one God? Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. You foolish person, do you want evidence that faith without deeds is useless? Was not our father Abraham considered righteous for what he did whenever he offered his son Isaac on the altar? You see, it was his faith and his actions that were working together, and his faith was made complete by what he did. Verse 23. And scripture was fulfilled that says Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. And he was called God's friend. You see that a person is considered righteous by what they do and not just by faith alone. In the same way, was not Rahab the prostitute considered righteous for what she did whenever she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in a different direction? As the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. Yeah, man. That's heavy stuff. So my best friend Mark said if we could make it out of this series with all of our teeth, we would be in a good place, right? Because you can't read that and not feel ouch. Like I can't even get past like the first couple of verses before I'm like, oh man, this one hurts. Like it hurts. Why? Well, like we learn that God's word is sharper than any double-edged sword. Like it hurts going in and heals coming out. Like that when we begin to wrestle with this tension of like, this isn't just stuff to know, but this is direction on how to go. This isn't just a bunch of stuff that we're like, oh yeah, I agree with that. Oh, whoa, that one's hard. Don't like that one. This is like the stuff that we put this into practice, it leaves the world saying, whoa, wait a minute. I think that they're onto something. I think that this actually is the way that the world is supposed to be. James kind of spotlights two big key themes in the second chapter. The first of those is favoritism. Second, faith. And he talks about how the overlapping of like, if our faith is a faith that shows and demonstrates favoritism, we need to hit pause for a second. So James uses this word personal favoritism in the Greek, which is literally prosopalimpsia, which literally means, like in the Greek, it means to receive the face. Isn't that beautiful language? To receive the face. That's what favoritism is. Receiving the face. You know what that means? That means that like looking at somebody and making a judgment that just because they look one way on the outside, they're like all together, doesn't mean that like on the inside, they're all together. And it doesn't mean, and here's what James is trying to say, like this prosopalimpsia, it means like don't get caught off guard. Don't assume that everybody on the outside is like on the inside, that things are exactly the same way. That means that like people who don't look put together at all, people who are poor, people who have nothing, they're actually in a better position and probably have more faith than you do. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, what do you mean? We were completely disbanded from Jerusalem. Do you realize we all had to rent U-Hauls and load up all of our stuff and get out of there for all of the intense persecution? So you're telling me that I don't get to look at people a certain way? That I don't get to like not allow certain people to come to my table and eat a meal? That I like don't have to accept invitations to restoration with certain people? James is saying, yeah, absolutely. Like don't you dare get caught off with just receiving the face or giving a certain face that isn't actually real. I've had to come to grips with this prejudice. Prejudice is realizing, and it's a conscious decision of refusing to love people equally. It's literally favoritism is making a decision ahead of time to put space between people who don't look like you. It's making this decision to say like, this is really, really hard. So as I'm like wrestling through this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was kind of taught this in my life. Like, were you taught this ever? That like there are certain places that you go and you don't go alone. There are certain places that you don't go at nighttime. There are certain kinds of people that when you see them, you put your wallet in your front pocket. Anybody ever told anything like that? There are certain kinds of people that, listen, you just cannot trust. And like growing up in a family that like raised by my grandparents who grew up on farms, who literally were just like on the edge of a racial divide in the United States. Like growing up and being raised by a family who is still extremely prejudiced towards certain people. I recognize that like when I stepped out of that and I moved and I went off to school, and maybe you had a moment in your life too, where you realized that wasn't right. As a matter of fact, it actually caused a lot of hurt and pain in your life. You see, here's the reality, is while we get so caught up looking on the outside of people's lives, God's business is looking at our heart. And here's the big truth. Jesus didn't die for everybody so that we might only love some people. Jesus didn't die. Jesus didn't give his life so that we might only show favor to certain people who live on the right side of the tracks, certain people who have certain kinds of education and drive certain kinds of cars and live in the right neighborhoods. No. Jesus died for the hope for the world to move closer to him, to be in not just a one-time transactional happening, but to actually live in relationship, in a personal, unique relationship with him. I was kind of like forced to reconcile. Like I've been guilty in my life of playing favorites. And I think I traced it all the way back to like elementary school at Ator Elementary, and I was holding in my hands a basketball, and we decided to break up and make two different teams, and everybody lined up against the wall. And who do you normally pick every time? Well, you normally pick somebody that you think is going to put you in a position to win, right? And I began to trace that and follow that all the way through my life. And here is what I came to. Partiality will not change the 603. Like looking at some people and just writing off certain towns, writing off like people who come from a certain background, partiality is not going to change the 603. It actually does more damage to our heart than anything else. And the reality is, James says, here's what the antidote to favoritism is: just give away mercy. Like, give mercy when you're tempted to pass judgment. It's that simple. When you are tempted to put space, just give mercy. So what does mercy look like? What should mercy look like in our life? Mercy means giving everybody another chance. Mercy means giving the people who have hurt you the worst, giving them another chance. Mercy means that God didn't just send his son to die for everybody so that we might love some. Mercy means that we pass out second chances to people over and over and over and over, because that is the heart of God. Mercy means we'll never quit on anyone. Mercy means that when we demonstrate love towards somebody and all we get back is silence, we keep pursuing them, because deep down they might not even have the strength to say it out loud, but everybody wants to be known and loved deeply. Mercy means we never give up on anybody. Mercy means everybody gets our undivided attention. Mercy means, like, we aren't going to be distracted by the things that we hold in our hand or the things that are going on in our head. Mercy means that whenever needs come our way, we don't look the other way. It means, like, when there are needs right in front of us, we don't look the other way. It's like, oh, well, somebody else will get that, and God sees them, and I just don't have time for this. When needs come our way, we don't look the other way. Mercy means we move. Mercy means I might not have all the information. Mercy means I am confessing right now, all I can see is the outside. That's it. All I can see is the outside. I have no idea what God is up to in this person's heart, in their lives. I have no idea what he is going, I have no idea. But what would happen? What would happen if we would actually live a story of mercy? Mercy triumphs judgment. My guess is, one of the big reasons you walked away from your faith as a kid was probably because when you looked at your faith and you looked at, like, the front row of what faith was for you, you saw more judgment than you saw mercy, would be my guess. And one of the things that I think is really important for us to do is whoever is closest to you, the closest person in relationship with you in this world, whoever that person might be, over lunch today, I want you to ask them this question. Am I living more a story of mercy or a story of judgment? Am I, like, in my life, you know me better than anybody. And do you know who the hardest truth is best received from? The people closest to us. So there's something important we need to grab a hold of. Like, asking over lunch, are we as a family, are we living a story more of mercy or of judgment? Because if we don't reconcile that, we might miss opportunities that God has put right in front of us. This was demonstrated in one of my this is like one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. Some of you will know exactly where I'm going with this. There was a little boy who was moved into a new neighborhood and was going to a new school, and he was, like, getting ready to get on this bus, and his knees were knocking. And as he gets on the bus, on his first day of school, he walks up the steps of the bus and starts looking, and, like, there are plenty of seats on the bus, and nobody is letting him have a seat at all. And all he hears is seats taken, seats taken, seats taken, seats taken. And this courageous little blonde-haired girl named Jenny looked at him and said, I don't care what everybody else sees when they see you. You can sit here if you want. Mercy is always keeping a spot open for the people who don't feel like they get a spot. Favoritism is actually not the way of Jesus. Favoritism is the way of the wasteland. And it goes like this, and I hope this frustrates the fire out of you like it does me. Honor the rich and judge the poor. Honor the rich and ignore the poor. Jesus came along, and he changed everything. Jesus looked at the poor, and you know what he said? He said, the way you treat them is how you treat me. Like, how you treat them, you might as well just be saying, this is how I feel about Jesus. Jesus came onto the scene to say, I'm sending you out. I am sending you out into the darkness to light it up. James says in James chapter 2, verse 8, he says, if we really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing it right. There are a lot of things we can say like, I don't know if I'm doing it right. I don't really know if I'm doing this whole thing right. But loving my neighbor as I love myself, I am doing it right. Whenever you are doing this, like whenever you love your neighbor the way you want to receive love, it's as if you are leaning into their lives and saying, tomorrow needs you. Tomorrow needs you, and I do too. Tomorrow needs you, and we do too. I was 13 years old, and I went to visit a church with my family, and I walked in, and I was in the bathroom, and there was another person who came into the bathroom, and all of a sudden, like, this is over bathroom talk, and it's just super weird, and it was like, oh, just wanted you to know how you doing. Good, things are going good. And he's like, oh, I just want you to know that if you don't go to our church, you are going to hell. And I was like, I'm going to the bathroom right now. I can go. I mean, I'm going somewhere else. I know, but I'm going to the bathroom right. And I just kind of thought, and this kind of like locked into my heart, and it's been there for a really long time. He just didn't know. Just like this poor guy, like didn't even know better. That it's possible. It's possible to have all the right information and miss in application. It's possible to know all of the answers to all of the trivia and completely miss the fact that God has called us to live and embrace the redemptive narrative, the redemptive meta-narrative that we see all the way from Genesis all the way through the book of Revelation. In contrast, James contrasts favoritism with faith. And he's just like, this is just the reality. I just want to know this. Can we be really honest for a minute? I just want to know, is it possible for me to have such perfect faith and to be walking step by step with a holy God who knows my name, knows every hair on my head, like who literally knows what is going to happen in my life tomorrow? Is it possible for me to have such a kind of perfect faith and completely write off my neighbor? You know my neighbors? Is it possible to have such a perfect faith that we could look at people in the world and say, nah, I'm gonna write you off? Is it possible? I don't believe it is. It's possible to believe all of the right things and completely live wrongly. And for many of us, like, this is a really hard stuff. Ready? James says that even demons of hell, this is heavy, believe all of the right things. And they shudder. And I would add, and they stutter as well. All right, they shudder and stutter. It is possible, come on. It is possible to just believe everything and all of the right things, but absolutely miss an application. And so what on earth does it look like for us? Somebody once said this, and this is like the Thanksgiving, this is my gift for you over Thanksgiving. You ready? Somebody said, faith is kind of like calories. You can't see them, but you can always see their results, right? So eat an extra piece of pie, like extra 14 deviled eggs or something. All right, we're going to call them heavenly eggs, I think, maybe. I don't know. My house. Call them whatever you want. I don't care. No judgment. Mercy everywhere for everybody. Mercy, mercy, mercy. If the reality is if you say that you believe what you should believe, if you say that you believe all of the things that you believe, then why are you behaving the way you behave? Like when Jesus demands and he says like, hey, I want to paint this picture. James, I want you to paint a picture, one of Abraham and one of Rahab. Abraham is the poster child, is the father of faith. Like everybody's like, yeah, Abraham. Man, he was an amazing, like when I think of Abraham, what do I think of? I think of faith, and everybody was with him. And James is writing, yeah, whenever you think of Abraham, you think of like this guy had faith. Like he waited for a son for so long, and God's like, I want you to bring him back to me. And so he actually did it. And everyone's like, well, he just had great faith. He had great faith. And James like, no. He had great doing faith. He had a great active faith. He had a faith that he was like, I trust God. I trust that who he says he is, and I'm going to put that into action. And then James brings in a lady named Rahab, who is a prostitute. And nobody would have said, hey, who is somebody you think of whenever you think of great faith? Like nobody in the back row would have been like, Rahab the prostitute, sir. Nobody would have ever said that. Nobody. And James says, listen, It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you came from. It matters who you love and who has sent you. Like that's like, come on, this is the reality. It doesn't matter, and this looks like, in reality for us, it looks like God can't use me because. 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 What would you put in that blank? What would you put in that blank? Your faith plus faith in motion equals movement. God is in the business of forgiveness. God is in the business of hope, and business is good. When we look around at the world, and we look at the world and we look at everything that is within our peripheral vision, I would say, and I would tell you honestly, I had so many reasons that God couldn't use me. And it was just a normal, ordinary, rotten, terrible, awful day several months ago. And the band's going to come up here, and they're going to close us out with a song. And as I tell you this story, you need to know, I tell you this story in ultimate humility to say, I got in my car, and I knew that I had to go pick up my son for practice, and I was in a really bad mood because I didn't eat lunch, and I'm hungry, and things weren't really going my way that day. And so I just thought, well, I'm going to go to practice tonight, and I'm just going to like get a really close parking spot so I don't have to get out of the car, because all those people out there are just really messy. So I'm just gonna park in my car. I'm gonna get really close to the fence, and like there's heat in there, and it was like freezing cold. And I thought, like, I could justify putting distance between me and all of these people. And I just kind of like looked out there and was watching my son and watching, and I saw all of these parents that were hugging the fence. They were on the fence watching their kids, and I was like, man, this is just not who I want to be. This is just not who I want to be. And I get out of my Jeep and I walk around all the way around to the opposite side of the field where there really wasn't anybody there. And as I got there, I felt like my phone started going off, and it was my 6:03 alarm. And if you don't know this, at Movement, we set our alarms at 6:03 a.m. and p.m., and we just pray this prayer together as a community. Hundreds of people pray it. It is a great anthem to remind us that we aren't even alone, and we are praying together every single day at 6:03 a.m. and p.m. And so we pray this prayer: God, move me closer to somebody who needs to move closer to you. Confession. Have you ever not wanted to pray that? I didn't that day. I didn't want to pray it. And so I just kind of ignored it for a while, because I was just like standing by myself. Nobody could even have heard it. And so my phone starts like beeping, beeping, beeping. And if it beeps long enough, I didn't know this, but it like sets off a parade in my pocket, and it just starts vibrating and throwing confetti and fireworks. And it was like, and so like I reached out and I grabbed it and was like, what do you want? Oh yeah. And I hit pause and just kind of like, okay, God, I'm going to pray with my eyes open. You know, don't let this be weird. And so I'm like praying like, God, move me closer. Somebody needs to move closer to you. And I swear, I turned to my right and there was a lady standing there. And I promise you, she was not there before. I promise. And I look over and I'm kind of like, oh, you know, and so I had this tug of war with God for a little bit, and I was like, no, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go talk to her. This is weird. Like, it's like me and her, and I'm like, this is weird. And so I don't want her to think I'm like hitting on her. This could be really creepy, right? So I kind of know her. Kids played on our team for a while, and so I walked over and was like, hey, I don't know that we've ever really like met or had a real conversation. And my name's Josh, and literally within minutes, it ended up into like, okay, so what do you do? And so I was like, well, I'm a storyteller. And she goes, oh, well, like at a library? And I was like, no, not at a library. And she was like, oh, at a bookstore? You work at Barnes & Noble, don't you? And I was like, oh, no. And she looked at me and like with her face just turned upside down and was like, well, what kind of stories do you tell? And I was like, well, actually, I tell stories about people like you. And she was like, huh? And within that moment, I kind of unpacked a few of your stories. And I said, I tell stories of hope. I tell stories about the story that we're all supposed to be living. And she was like, well, man, that's really interesting. What do you do? And we just get down to like, she's like, okay, fine. Where do you do it? Where does your paycheck come from? All right. And I was like dancing everything. And I was like, well, actually, like we moved here from Oklahoma to start churches for people who don't like church. And she just kind of looked at me, and I saw like her face went from like being like super engaged to like all like just like 500 shades of I think I just saw a ghost. And I thought, what on earth is going on? And she was like, can I ask you a question? And And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, we're out here and we've been talking, so yeah, of course you can ask me a question. And she's like, I've always wondered, what do I have to do to get to go to one of those? And over the next 30 minutes, I heard her story about how her family was told at one point in time, because of something in their past, that they weren't allowed to go back to church, that they weren't allowed to ever take communion, that they weren't ever allowed to live this story, live life in community with people who love Jesus. And like my heart just absolutely broke. And the reality is, do you know that within your life, there are people right now that you might not even have any idea the depths of pain that is going on in their heart, because we are so focused on what's on the outside, receiving the face. Like, there are people in your life right now. I believe that every single one of us have at least one person that needs to hear this message from us today. Tomorrow needs you. Tomorrow needs you. Our band is getting ready to perform a song that has been played by a very well-known band that wrote this song, because our world is full of a lot of people who don't see hope. They don't feel like they have a future. And we're going to ask you to just sit here and read these words and let them marinate over your heart and soul, and begin praying and asking God to show you who needs to hear these words from you. Who needs to hear these words? Tomorrow needs you. Who needs to hear those words? Pray that prayer. God, show me who needs to hear these words as the band plays this song.
Should have stayed, were the signs I ignored. Can I help you not to hurt anymore? We saw brilliance when the world was asleep. There are things that we can have but can't keep. If they say, who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? Flickers, flickers. Who cares if someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, or quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. The reminders tear the floor from your feet. In the kitchen, one more chair than you need. Oh, and you're angry, and you should be. Is not fair. Just 'cause you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. If they say, who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares if someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, or quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. Who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares if someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, or quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. We do.
If you were caught in the middle of a season in your life where you feel like you are surrounded by depression and anxiety, I want you to hear this clearly. Tomorrow needs you. If you have been struggling with something going on in your health that has been without of your control, and you feel like, man, I just don't know how to live and how to live well, tomorrow needs you, and we do too. If you're somebody who is stuck struggling in a job where you have failed to find your purpose and you feel like every day is harder and harder and harder and harder to wake up and to get out and go to work, I want you to hear, tomorrow needs you. If you feel like you have received a hand of cards that was unfair, tomorrow needs you. If you are living with the consequences of some past mistakes and they've been really, really heavy on your heart, tomorrow needs you. If you feel like I don't even know how I'm going to face this upcoming holiday emotionally, and you're tempted to drown it out with stuff that will just hurt you and those around you, tomorrow needs you. I want to read these words over you. God said, I will give you a new heart. I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. And then you will live in the land I gave your ancestors, and you will be my people, and I will be your God. Whoever finds God finds life. And chances are there is somebody right around you in your life that needs to hear, tomorrow needs you. And today, that might be you. So we're getting ready to sing an anthem that is literally an anthem for us as a community of people. We are surrounded by so many people in the 603 who wonder if God could ever forgive them, if they could ever have a future relationship with him. And the answer and the reality is we know the answer to that is yes. And so we want this song that we're getting ready to sing together as a community to be a story that we actually live. So as we close today,